Welcome to Leading the Way, Oakland Schools leadership series highlighting dynamic leaders throughout Oakland County. I'm Dandridge Floyd, the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources for Oakland Schools, and today I am proud to be joined by Congresswoman Haley Stevens, who proudly serves Michigan's 11th District. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Madam Superintendent. I'm delighted to be in your presence.
Well, I am just grateful that you were able to take the time out of your, I know, busy schedule to come and share a little nuggets with us about leadership and how your dynamic leadership has played out and improved the lives of people in Oakland County. So let's jump right into it. What leadership qualities do you think have been most important to your success?
Well, one of them is the ability to listen, to be honest with you. My mantra is listen, learn, and lead in that order, particularly in an elected role where there's so many different needs and opinions and viewpoints coming at you. You've really got to meet people where they're at. And that also enables what I believe is a big doctrine of servant leadership. And I know that that runs through all of Oakland schools. So how can I achieve servant leadership? It's by listening, learning, and then leading in that order.
And I imagine that you have counterpoints, points, and everything in between coming to you, and you have to synthesize a lot of that information. How do you do that? What are you, is it a spreadsheet?
You know what, that's a great question in part because, look, there are a lot of people who write into my office, who come and visit, and I really like to get to know people, but it's also impossible to get to know everyone in this district. And so I'm blessed to have a great team of people here in Michigan and in our nation's capital that are helping me distill that information. And then one of the areas in which I push myself is how many times am I in front of and sitting down with people who are new to me? How am I meeting people where they're at? You know, if it's at their small business, in their neighborhood, at another community event. And look, a lot of times it's the usual suspects. They show up to everything. We love them. That's so exciting. But I really push myself to get out there in our community and connect with people and hear what's on their mind. Learn what they're doing too, by the way.
Sure. So I want to take you back. When you were starting off in your career as a leader, maybe even pre your Obama administration time, thinking about that Haley Stevens, what advice do you wish someone would have given you early in your career about leadership?
You know, I really think that hearing the words, what is meant to be will be, would have been important, because you think about yourself in the first 10 years of your career. And I know for myself, I had that healthy agitation, but I had a little agitation. Like I was always kind of wondering what's next, or I wasn't necessarily ready to settle. And I remember a mentor of mine, you know, she said to me, you're willing to take risks. And she said, that's gonna put you on a path to success. So a lot of times I was kind of wondering, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing, you know, not just for my career, but for my community or the area. And also, a lot of times it was self-selected. Like I put up my hand to get involved, and it wasn't, let me game something out for the next 10 years. It was just more so, this is what was my calling, and I went after it. And then as a result, what unfolded from there led me into these different roles and these abilities to serve and stand up for people.
Wow. So I'm hearing get in the room.
Yeah, get in the room.
Participate.
Yeah.
Raise your hand. That's really important. So you have a big job, and leadership for you is incredibly important because you have to represent, was it 800,000 people? That's not a small feat. So what do you think's a truth about leadership that is rarely discussed, but extremely important to being a good leader?
You know, some of the times it's about mission, and sometimes it gets lost. We get so absorbed in personality and style and admiration. We gotta take it back to the mission. Is this person achieving the mission? You know, that their position is set forward. And that's really something where I kind of push myself too. Like sometimes someone says, oh, you're an important person. Oh, no. I'm just a person who has an important role. And it's also easy when you have so many different expectations and people pulling on you to remind people, hey, I'm here to be your champion in the nation's capital. I'm here to help pass the nation's laws, and I'm here to help implement those laws on behalf of our district. And I love how you just mentioned that I represent 800,000 people, because that is a major and profound responsibility. And yet the laws that we pass, the bills that we write, that's also for the whole country. So I've got to make sure that I'm capturing the will of the people, but then also, convincing my colleagues from all over the country to support what would be good. And, talking about education, talking about supply chain, people look at us in Michigan, it's a bragging point right now.
Yeah, well, it's very similar to the work we do at Oakland Schools, and you know this better than probably anyone, but we have to, enact policies and rules for our Oakland County constituents, and we have rural, we have urban, we have suburban, and all of those needs are so different, but they're just as equally important, and it becomes really difficult if you're not listening and if you're not getting to know people at their core, as which you described, so that's important. So, you may have heard we had an election, may have been something that came across your feed. What do you see are the biggest challenges for leaders as we move forward?
Not tearing each other down, truthfully. And it's not leader to leader. A lot of times it's that reaction to that comment on social media, the fact that we live in an age now where anyone can almost say anything because they can type it on their keyboard, how not to be reactionary. I'm always balancing that reactionary scale versus creative or innovative. Am I just spending all my time dealing with the incoming, or am I putting things forward? Am I advancing that mission? Well, if you fall into that reactionary mode, if you think about it, a lot of times that can be everybody else's agenda, but that can also be some of that negativity as well. So my dad has this slogan, and he was a teacher, and he went to Oakland University, so he did his student teaching back in the day at the old Bethune Elementary in Pontiac. But his slogan, and he taught this in his classroom: when the bad comes your way, step aside. When the bad comes your way, step aside, step aside, step aside, and watch it go by. That's a song he used to sing to his students. And I really think in terms of, look, how we're choosing to lead. Sometimes you're in a crisis. Sometimes you're in the middle of something major, and it is tough. We've got global dynamics right now at play. We've got wars in a couple different parts across the world. We wrapped up a war in Afghanistan. That stuff you can't escape from. But the small negativities that just bring you down and distract you, and then also lead to more negativity because that's what you're putting out, we've got to somehow find a way to reject that. And so, look, politics is one thing, governing is another.
Whole different beast.
It's a whole other deal. And so, I balance those out, every other year, when the election comes up and, I'm on the ballot, and then I'm also governing, and I know people are looking up to the role, and so you got to continue to set that tempo. Look at our governor. She's dealt with so much different things, but she just wrote a book, and she talked about this in her book: how to stay positive, how to stay nice, how to grant people the dignity that they deserve, and that's the dignity of their work too, and the dignity of their roles. I mean, there are so many things that people do here in Oakland County. Think of Oakland Schools, for instance, the teachers, the parapros, all the educators, the people who go into this education ecosystem, then the parents, and then of course the students. And it's so much pressure because it's everyone's hopes, dreams, and aspirations. I mean, think of our cafeteria workers, our food service workers, everyone who makes the wheel go round. And I always think about, how are they being touched? How are they being affected? How are they being saluted? How am I hearing what they need so that I can take that in my role and advance the mission forward? That's what leadership really is. It is about bringing a collective around that mission. And sure, maybe being one of the articulators of that mission, one of the ball movers of that mission. But if you're not bringing other people alongside you, you're not necessarily achieving all the goals that leadership is asking of you.
Sure. And I can imagine that it's not easy to do that. It takes a lot of work and determination, but being mission driven is a thing to aspire to. And I think when you're mission driven, you're not distracted by the negativity and you can stay on course. So that's really important. My last question. So what advice would you give to aspiring human resource leaders?
Well, I'll tell you, my mother was in human resources.
Wow.
And
You have stories then.
I have stories.
You have stories then.
I do. I absolutely do. And but I would also say this, I do a lot of business visits, and I always go to that HR person, because in HR, you are dealing with all the people. You're dealing with the personalities, you're dealing with fit, you're dealing with tough conversations, even sometimes the personal. And one, I really do want people in human resources to know that their work is valued, because just that recruitment, I mean, think about what you're doing here at Oakland Schools and how so many people are tied in, to placement, to inspiring the next generation of teachers, to retention of our educators. And, sure, we've got to follow by the rules. Everyone does. We follow by the rules. But don't be afraid to push for that breakthrough innovation, that breakthrough idea, that you can bring forward. Well, what if we organize this group like that, or just a new proposal? Because a lot of times it's just putting your hand up and self-selecting or self-articulating what could be a good fit for something.
Well, listen, we're lucky to have you here at Oakland County. And the state's lucky to have you as one of our representatives, and I'm so glad you were here to spend time with me.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for tuning in to this session of Leading the Way.